Well, it wasn't quite the level of surprise that we opened up the show with on Saturday night. It is nonetheless a pretty stunning development for Raw to end tonight and to have Rhea Ripley lose her title clean in the middle of the ring to Io Sky, and perhaps a new path charted towards WrestleMania. What is up, everyone? Happy Monday, March 3rd. I am Rob. This is the Nocturnal Knockout, a Brass Ring Media podcast right here on the One True Sport YouTube channel. What's up, guys? What's up, Twitter? What's up, RVD Twitter? Well, it's been a couple of days in wrestling to catch your breath, to focus on where we are going forward, and to absorb our first WWE wrestling show post Cena heel turn. Now, if you were expecting a lot of progression on that storyline, you were disappointed tonight. However, WWE did not ignore the elephant in the room. In fact, it seemed like on every rejoinder tonight, every time we went back to programming, they were referencing John Cena's heel turn, showing reactions. Definitely a bit of a dark cloud over the show. And in the chat, we're talking about CM Punk's promo. He addressed it the most directly. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. 3 championship matches tonight. Only one title changed hands. Instead of having all your championship matches on the pay-per-view, they were all tonight. Chad Gable bought a box for $500. Don't know if that's going to help him face or defeat any luchadors. Kobe, I think we'll get there, Kobe. I think we'll get there. We also had a lot of progression towards next week's show at the Garden, including a massive main event. One-on-one in a cage, Seth Rollins, CM Punk next week. Logan Paul getting called out by AJ Styles next week. Rowan Spider for $500 in the box, according to the boss. That's a possibility. What's up, guys? Speaking of possibilities, there's all kinds of possibilities for you guys to get in on the chat, get in on the action, and get in on the discourse. Go ahead and send a chat the way the boss, Kobe, E, David, and Austin have already. And if you're really feeling generous, you can go ahead and send one of those super chats. We can talk about a couple things tonight. I think the cloud of the John Cena heel turn is still hanging over everything, and we still need to process that. We still need to talk about that, and we still can talk about that. But we had Raw tonight with a lot of matches that had high stakes and only maybe a little bit of WrestleMania progression tonight, although it was very significant. Let's crack open a Code Red here before we get into it. You know, a couple of weeks ago, when they first announced that Rhea was going to be facing Io on the Raw after Elimination Chamber, everybody sort of tilted their head because it was so weird for them to announce a Raw match, in particular one the night after a pay-per-view, so far in advance, and build it essentially as if it were a pay-per-view match. Now, I think going into the Elimination Chamber, it was very, very difficult to pick the winner of the women's match because it didn't really seem like there was a natural opponent. And you knew that you had this match tonight. So I thought very smartly on the Chamber and leading up, they did not frame the women's match as a direct shot at Rhea Ripley. Instead, it was a shot at the winner of tonight's match, which absolutely makes sense given that the winner of tonight's match turns out to be Io Sky. Now, where does everyone go from here? Who knows? There's the possibility of a triple threat. It's hard to think of Rhea Ripley not being involved in the main event scene going into WrestleMania or not being involved in the title scene. But we're probably going to get a triple threat main event in night one if the storyline progressions keep happening in the way they are. So there's a few cards to be played. Are these all the pieces? Is Io going to make it to WrestleMania? May she be eliminated along the way? What's going on with Bianca? Bianca tonight did not address the Jade Cargill Naomi situation, only aiming to keep things professional and focused on the topic at hand. That is another thing that'll also be addressed on Friday. Austin wants to know what Papa H is cooking. He can't wait for WrestleMania 41. You can't wait, Austin, you can't wait, but it's going to be a while. We have a solid 2 months, no PLEs, although some of these Raws and SmackDowns, they're probably going to load up as major cards. Next week's show is one we can flag as a major card with huge matches on it. What did you guys think overall of the show tonight? Again, I feel like we're in a bit of a weird time because coming off of last night, coming off of Saturday, I can't get used to this pay-per-views being on Saturday still. There was such a buzz in the air, such topic of discussion to be had about the Cena heel turn that we had to figure out how we were going to get through a regular wrestling show, especially one that didn't really revolve around that Cena heel turn when it came to the actual matches and storyline progression. So what did you think of Raw? Was it a good Raw? How did all these title matches, this sort of Night of Champions that they run, how did that resonate with you? And what did you guys think of that opening promo by CM Punk? Let's get to some of your chats before we get into the show. Austin's proposing Cody and Punk versus Cena and The Rock in night one of WrestleMania. I don't think they're going to keep doing that gimmick every year where The Rock wrestles in a tag match on the night before. Don't think that's going to be the case. Austin was really into Punk's promo since he really loves the motivated Punk. Glad you're doing better, Austin. The Cena heel turn was really getting you down the other night. Glad to see that you've recovered. David said this is a wild one. No one expected this. It's pretty wild. Whether you're talking about the Cena heel turn, but I think you're talking about Rhea Ripley there losing the title tonight. Did not see that coming. Would not have actually placed the bet on it, although we probably should have, given that they were being so particular about it. The boss wanted to note that we have till Friday. And yes, and that was a piece of storyline progression we did get as far as the Cena heel turn was Michael Cole's note that Cody will address it on Friday. He thought it was going to be Chavo meeting Gable. No, I think it's the guy that they bought the Gremlins from. I think that's who met Gable. Does Rollins get his win back? Austin asks. I don't know. You can make your predictions in the chat, saying it would be one-on-one, referring to the Raw match they had a couple of weeks ago. Maybe, and that's the justification to get to the next match. I think we're still a week or two away, right, next week from a Roman Reigns appearance. So unless plans change, will he be involved in that match? Is he even going to be in the building? He doesn't tend to show up on nights he's not advertised, so I don't think so. No liquor. Yeah, and the new format of Raw Talk into a podcast or like long form YouTube video. All right, Sam Roberts, you want to compete, buddy? You want to do this? You want to go head to head? As far as the show goes, he said it was good. Never cared for the War Raiders, even when Vince had them changing names. Every week, wish Creed would have won. Trey thought it was a really solid Raw from start to finish. And he predicts Dom is going to take the IC title from Braun. Braun uncalled spear again. Purge to Carlito speedy recovery. That was pretty awesome. And the boss is predicting that Rollins will get the win from an unintentional assist from Roman Reigns. So that was your chats. Glad to hear from you again, guys. Let's break down the show. We opened with an Elimination Chamber recap. And when we got to the Cena heel stuff, they had this like violin music playing with it. It was very dramatic. They were really trying to communicate a sadness to you that this is something to be concerned about. This is something that should be tugging with your emotions. And as they had the walk-ins, you had a very angry CM Punk walking to the ring, a very motivated CM Punk, and a crowd in Buffalo that was super into CM Punk. CM Punk ended up giving what he would refer to as not his pipe bomb. No. That's back in 2011 when he's sitting in Vegas. In Buffalo, in the year of 2025, it is not a pipe bomb that CM Punk throws out there. Instead, it's a State of the Union. Now, State of the Union speeches are usually pretty boring. They're pre-written, and you have a planned response by the opposing party. This was not any such thing. This was a very fun State of the Union address. CM Punk got it all off his chest. It's a great line when he came out there. CM Punk noted that he was going to have to, that he'd been back there thinking about his enemies and what he's going to do with his enemies and contemplating on his enemies. And he noted that when you're CM Punk, your enemies include just about everyone, which I thought was a great line. I mentioned in terms of the chamber match how it was amazing that CM Punk seemingly had like a blood feud with every member in the chamber. Every competitor had something going on with Punk. And it's kind of funny because this guy is not on the most full-time schedule and was injured half the year, but yet has a blood feud with half the guys in Elimination Chamber. But he had to get some stuff off his chest, like you guys had to get some stuff off your chest. He referred to Dwayne as a bald fraud and Mr. Midlife Crisis. You know, just there to take what is given to him, not what has been earned by CM Punk. And obviously there's tons of history there. And with a fully entrenched heel rock, we can once again just play all over that history. I wonder if his arms are long enough to box with God on this occasion. But then he mentioned John Cena and says that we can see through him now, and that he's been selling all these people and all these kids BS, basically saying that he knew him all along. Mr. Never gave up on himself. And he's going to make a wish that he never did. And then he turns his focus to Seth Rollins. Now, CM Punk notes that Seth Rollins now has his undivided attention. I guess Punk has completely given up on the idea that he would be involved in a title match in a main event, although I'm assuming this match will main event night one, the 2-for-1 special. Guess that counts. But he asks Becky to come get her man. And of course, that brings out Becky's man. Seth Rollins comes out, and we got no promos from Seth. We got no outfits from Seth. None of that. Just straight brawling. We got a pull apart that goes all over the arena. As you can see on the screen, you got a crazed face by Punk. You've got Hurricane, Jason Jordan, Adam Pierce. The whole crew is out there to save us. And these guys cannot stop fighting. It wasn't one of those cases where they are just beating up all the security guards. The security guards are holding them back, and then the momentum of the crowds gets back into each other, and they keep fighting. They keep this going for a good amount of time, even through the commercial break. And the crowd is super into this pool part brawl. And this is a super hot way to get started on the show. Now, later on in the show, the brawls are continuing to the point where we have a cutaway of Adam Pierce and Seth, and they're talking about what to do and things being out of control. And that is when the match is granted to Adam Pierce. As Seth Rollins says, this heel of facing CM Punk is one that he is going to die on. So next week at the Garden, as mentioned earlier, it'll be CM Punk and Seth Rollins. What do you guys think of this as follow-up coming out of the chamber? Because I think there's a few things at play. For one, CM Punk was the only one to really truly address the big elephant in the room of the John Cena heel turn. He was not right there when it happened, but he was the closest one that we saw on TV today, who would have been the closest of proximity. He has tons of history with John Cena. He has some nice history with The Rock. He's just a guy who speaks his mind. If it wasn't going to be him, it would be a guy like Drew, I guess, who wasn't on the show tonight. That was his role, and I thought he knocked it out of the park. In fact, if you've been watching the last couple of weeks, Punk's promos have been top tier. Now, his promos have been pretty good for a while. Punk's a pretty good promo guy. The promos with Drew were excellent earlier in the year, but now we're getting the consistency because we're seeing him on TV much more often. And it seemed to be week after week, his promo segments are a highlight of the show. And this week was no different when he was standing on top of that announce table, just spitting everything he had at people before they started this brawl segment. And it leads into the big match next week. As we mentioned, you had on one of the early January 6th Raws, I want to say the first one, right? CM Punk got the win over Seth Rollins, so he has 1-0 over him. Will they even it out? It seems we're going into a triple threat. I know that Roman Reigns hasn't really been mentioned. It's not like they're going to leave him off of the card. We know we have Cena and Cody on the other night. You guys have had the proposals about the tag matches. Don't think that's going to happen. This is the big singles match before the triple threat match. This is the match that was essentially been on the pay-per-view before. And I think it'll be great. I think it'll be great. Austin says heel Cena versus good guy CM Punk. I think it's very interesting. He says Becky told Seth he can't dress like his wife since he lost. Austin notes it reminds him of Cena and Lesnar brawl in 2012. Yeah, I was thinking of that one, or the fun one you have. That's a good one. That fun one you had in 2015 with Brock and Undertaker. That's the one where Brock screams out that I'm gonna kill you, and Undertaker, you're gonna have to. And R-Truth was there to just settle everyone down. R-Truth got everyone in order. Still not ruling out R-Truth being the peacemaker with all this John Cena stuff, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. So something Austin picked up on the Elimination Chamber broadcast was Cena told Punk sorry after he put him in the STFU after the stomp. Well, that's not very hellish of him now, is it? Next week's match should be an absolute banger. I don't know how definitive of an ending we're gonna get, but that's gonna be a really good match. I'm kind of looking forward to talking about that. Don't know if Brock's gonna show up and kill Cena the next day. Don't think it's gonna happen. Maybe a little later on we'll talk about some people that John Cena can heal on, because there's plenty of people for him to do that with. So that was the opening segment, hot opening segment. The crowd just eating every part of this up. CM Punk doing his thing on the microphone. Buffalo crowd was ready to have fun. From there, we go to Otis versus Gunther. Now, Gunther comes out and he once again is going to cut a promo. As you recall, last week he had that great segment with Akira Tozawa doing his thing and lasting a little bit of time there with Gunther. One of the things he says, though, to Gunther is that some people call Gunther a freak of nature, or call Otis a freak of nature, but Gunther just calls him a freak. To Otis, Gunther reminds him of Jay, and that a guy like Otis doesn't belong in the ring. Now, Gunther's a popular guy with a lot of different demographics of wrestling fandom, but he must be really big amongst like wrestling podcasters. Like, I think they must think everything he say is a shoot, because it sounds like word for word from old man yelling at cloud wrestling podcasters, the way Gunther talks. Not a bad thing, but it is very hilly. Maybe that's the point. Otis gets kicked in the face as he was getting dressed down by Gunther. And Otis actually eats a lot of boots to the face throughout this match. But Otis does get himself a nice little pop whenever he hit that fall away slam. This match went through a couple of commercial breaks. It wasn't as long as last week's Akira Tozawa match. It was a little more even, which I guess you can figure based on the size. It was a little long. I thought that maybe Gunther would just put him away, but that was not the case. They're building a little feud over here out of the Alpha guys and Gunther, which is kind of cool. And then at the end of the match, you have, of course, you have a big. First of all, there's the big chop spots were amazing. These two giant guys in their slap spots, they could really cause some redness. Otis actually got a 2 count too, after a big caterpillar move, but Gunther got the pin with one of his power bombs. And then after the match, immediately, he goes after Otis and he's attacking him just like last week. Tozawa comes in, he gets beaten up for his trouble. He's beating both guys up, and Jay comes out to save the day. Now, initially, Jay was standing tall, but that didn't last, as Gunther eventually got the sleeper locked in and took him out, made him pass out. Perhaps a little bit of a tease from the match. Are we going to end with a pass out technical submission? It seems like we've been having a lot of matches, or at least just, a lot of what was going on at the Chamber end in technical submission. Don't hate it as a finish. I don't hate any of these kind of different match topics, as long as they use them on a fairly regular basis. What do you guys think, though, of Gunther taking up his time with the Alpha Academy and then Jace making the save towards the end of these segments, and that basically being what has been the build to this big WrestleMania match for the last couple of weeks? He feels that the Alpha Academy got what they deserved. Like I said, I think a lot of people would agree with you. A lot of people would agree. Cut backstage to an AJ Styles promo. AJ Styles is asked about John Cena, but as is customary in WWE these days, you get one line of your response to Jackie Redmond or Kathy Kelly out, and then Karrion Kross interrupts you. AJ says that WWE needs to be reminded of who he is. And in fact, next week in the Garden, he's going to call out Logan Paul. So I don't know. They threw some stuff in a little bit different direction. I've been sensing Braun Breaker versus AJ, but they had Braun very much with the Judgment Day crew tonight and a little bit of Logan Paul and AJ. Is that the direction for WrestleMania? Could be. We also have nearly 2 months towards WrestleMania. What's to say they can't have a big match between now and then? But Logan Paul is interesting because if that's who he's calling out, there's not going to be a lot of time to pivot to someone else and probably build to a big match on Raw. If that's who he starts feuding with, I think that's who he's going to feud with. Yes, he did, Eddie, and we should close that loop. He had the promo when he was leaving, checked in on the Alpha guys. A real fire up promo there for Jay. Glad we got the Tony D'Angelo discourse in the chat. That's what we needed. AJ Styles would be the babyface on Raw. Well, he is on Raw. And again, I think they're doing a decent job with this Jay Gunther build. It doesn't feel like the biggest thing in the world, but I don't think it's really intended to. There's just whatever's going on, and I've been saying this for several weeks. Whatever's going on with The Rock and Cody and all those guys just feels like it's on a much higher priority and level and star power than whatever's going on this side of the title picture. But for what they have to work with and where they're at, I think they're doing a fantastic job. And then we get to another title match for the evening, or should I say, yeah, we had a champion earlier, but that wasn't a title match. Women's Intercontinental title match. I think the second one we've gotten on Raw in about 3 weeks, as Lyra Valkyria, the champ, defended against Ivy Nile. Now, the story of this match was really Ivy working the lower extremities, specifically the lower leg of Lyra, but then Lyra eventually hitting her Nightwing finisher to get the title, or excuse me, to retain her title, and to disappoint the Alpha, the Gable guys. Chad Gable's all over the place. I can't say his mid card. His mid card selection correctly. But this was a fine match. As were most of the matches on this night, like good solid matches. It took a little bit of time to get going, but once it did, it was entertaining. This has been built for like 4 weeks, where Ivy has just been obsessed with Lyra, but she doesn't get the job done. And so, spoiler from the other thing that happened, none of these Gable associates did a good job. Guess they're going to have to deal with what's in the box. I am ready, though, for a little bit of storyline to happen in this women intercontinental division. Ivy Nile felt like she almost concocted the storyline within her own little universe, and then it went to this match. If you're going to have these secondary titles, you should probably have some reason for them to be defended, or else maybe we'll just have these random matches and they can fill very, very lower card, which they do right now, despite this being a pretty good match we got here on Raw. Austin's all for AJ and Paul at Mania. He's a big AJ mark. Michael says Lyra and Ivy was good. I agree. I enjoyed that. E called it match of the night. Austin said it was okay. It's hard to declare match of the night now. There's only like 4 matches on Raw. I don't think so, but I don't know. Not sure on that. Backstage, we got the follow up of the brawl with Rollins and Punk, and that is where the declaration of the match for next week comes to be. Eddie says AJ will be involved in the IC match at Mania, probably be a multi-man match. We're looking at a lot of multi-person matches, though. This better not be WrestleMania 2000 over here, but that does seem to be the direction that we're headed in, and that's not a great direction to be in. No, nobody wants to be there if that is where we're at. We come back to sharp dressing Ludwig Kaiser cutting a promo in the ring, talking about his victories from last week and saying he wants his respect. But just as he said that, Pentagon runs out there with his red shirt to beat up Kaiser. Back and forth they go, but Penta ended up getting the best of him. I think I got a photo of that. Let's see. There it was. Yeah, Penta was looking pretty good. Not just his moves, but that red shirt was looking nice and went ahead and took him out. But is this feud going to continue? Are we still going into this? Are we getting any progression on Penta going forward? Or does he just beat these guys? Still gets a hell of a reaction. I think he's still moving some merch. But probably want to see something with him. Generally, Austin, I think the cage match should be that, but not the way it's presented in modern WWE. So Eddie thinks, going back to the Punk and Seth stuff, that with Punk and Seth on Raw next week, he thinks it'll just be Roman and Seth at Mania with no Punk. And then on his next comment, he says he could see Logan Paul screwing Punk over next week. It could be with all the interaction they've had, and then they would pair off in that. Punk versus Logan Paul is not a terrible idea, and I think the chemistry would be great. I just think this year feels weird for that. But there feels like either way, even with the improvements of the WrestleMania build, with everything you had with The Rock and all that, still feels after all this time there's like an odd man out in the WrestleMania build, and I don't know where it is, but it's true. There's an odd man out somewhere. Yeah, those promos would be pretty good. We got a Bianca promo on Raw, and that's where she mentioned that she really wasn't going to address the Jada Naomi situation out of respect, and she was going to focus on her WrestleMania opponent. And then we got our tag match, the War Raiders versus the Creed brothers. Now, this had been built in a few different versions of this for a couple of weeks. And this was another pretty good little match, just like the one they had a couple of weeks ago. Not really a match that you're looking forward to whenever you see it pop up on the calendar. It just doesn't get your attention in that kind of way. But these Raw shows, as they moved to Netflix, have these fairly drawn out matches that all are generally well received. And when given time, you have pretty good showcases every week for a lot of these guys. And that was the case this week. The War Raiders did win, but that's not before eating some some shooting stars, some sentons, all kinds of flippy stuff by these real Americans here, but they did not get the job done. And Master Gable has just got to be really disappointed in all of his proteges. All of them let him down. Eddie says the right team won. Mike says this was a tag title without DQ, which just seems to be most tag matches that are on TV these days. And Austin proposes Kurt Angle as Gable and the Creed's managers. He says that's a crazy idea. I don't think that idea is that crazy. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I don't think that's crazy. I think that's been floated like a bazillion times. He probably is, Eddie. Shorty G probably is disappointed when he looks in the mirror. The LWO threw out a pre-taped promo, culminating, obviously, at the New Day, but culminating with Ray calling out the New Day for a tornado tag match next week. So another massive match as the LWO takes on the New Day. The New Day, who are one of the other shocking heel turns of the last few months, but again, overshadowed by that thing that happened 2 nights ago. Cut back to the ring, and Finn is calling out Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker's up in the shield position, responding. Buddy Brock walks down to the ring and then has to take out a whole slew of Judgment Day guys as he stares them all down. And that was the big throw everyone around Braun Breaker segment of the week. There was some stuff earlier with Finn and his embarrassment and all of that stuff for the Judgment Day that is just mind-numbing at this point. It puts you to sleep. From there, we got the official Cena heel turn recap, and we had the short update by Michael Cole. And again, that was the big follow-up. That and the Punk promo were the two pieces of follow-up we got off of the Cena heel turn. This is also the point that we got the Jey Uso promo that was mentioned earlier after he checked on Otis and those guys. And one of the last line I think he says at WrestleMania, "I'm crashing out," and walked off. Very good promo, as mentioned earlier. Lots of passion to it. Again, the stakes don't feel very high for this match, but the build itself, I got no issue with. So what are we getting? So Michael said this is a high promo for Devitt versus Braun. When are we getting that? Are we getting that at Mania? Or where is that happening? So Michael's prediction is Mania. And then that takes us to our main event. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. As mentioned, this match had a weird build just because of the date that it was set for. We generally don't have matches scheduled in that kind of way. And in the way that WWE were explicit about the fact that this match was happening and that results going into WrestleMania could vary. This match, for the most part, was a very, very slow match for most of the match. It was a lot of back and forth of trading moves. And they're telling this story, as they've been telling, that despite the differences in their perception, Rhea Ripley cannot beat Io Sky. It doesn't happen. Over a few years, hasn't happened. But as Rhea noted in her more recent promos, it's been a long time. She's a completely different person now than all these other times they have faced. But things were no different. I did like the touch, as you would do, of having the person who you are essentially competing for a shot at, even though you are the champion. Bianca's ticket is already punched, so Bianca's out there. She's ringside, and again, there's a little bit of ambiguity with Bianca's character as a whole. I think the Jade Naomi stuff is going to focus on just Jade and Naomi, but Bianca also has a major role in those characters, in her reaction to the chamber. That was a big deal. And then in her winning the chamber and the consequences there and how that affects the rest of the group. So she's ringside, and Rhea just kind of becomes obsessed with her throughout the match. She's taunting her. She keeps looking over at her. And that's ultimately what costs her, because she just keeps getting distracted, keeps looking over, and eventually you get a reversal after the what was going to be like a top rope slam or power bomb, and you have the Hurricanrana, and then you get the moonsault, and you have Io Sky as your new women's champion. After a couple of weeks ago, when we were saying she was on a very low key level, the MVP of the show for a couple of weeks, she's now the champ on the show. So congrats to Io. Good for her. And let's see where this angle goes or how this plays out. We've got triple threats abound all over the card, and that scares me. And I don't want it to be real, so that's why I keep thinking it's not going to happen. But of all the cases in storyline where you could maybe justify a triple threat in terms of a title match, this may be it. It would be hard to, with any logic, deny Ripley a rematch, but they could. I don't think they will, though, unless they've got something else for Rhea that we're not seeing, something from the outside that is stored up for her to do, something really big and really special. I don't know what would be bigger for her character than being involved in this match. But a triple threat wouldn't necessarily accomplish that. And as is always the case with these triple threats, the winner just doesn't have the same oomph to it. And that would be my concern here, as you have three people who have already had major WrestleMania wins, with the exception of Io Sky, who, as I mentioned at the end of the broadcast today, went in defending a title last year at WrestleMania. Could be doing so again. But despite there being a crystallized WrestleMania card, I don't think we should invest too much into a lot of things being absolutely finalized unless they are absolutely finalized. Because as I have mentioned so often tonight, there is a lot of time between now and WrestleMania. I mean, there's a freaking foreign tour, like the one that used to go on after WrestleMania. That's still happening. It's just kind of happening in the middle. I don't know, why am I so overwhelmed by that? I don't know, but it's a long time to WrestleMania. I know how our brains work and how we think this cycle goes, but that's not the case. Looking on the old Wikipedia, the only match they've updated for WrestleMania since Sunday is Io Sky versus Bianca. So we have Cody versus Cena, Tiffany versus Charlotte, Gunther versus Jay, Io versus Bianca. You know, going forward, we keep talking about how this card's coming through. We're going to have to start just talking about what's penciled in and what's not. Maybe we'll get an actual pencil to see what's penciled in. So looking at that, that basically just indicates all the singles title matches in theory are set, with everything else to piece around it. And again, it makes you ask the question, is this good enough for WrestleMania? I think after what we saw on Saturday night, the question may be somewhat irrelevant, because what happened was so big and so significant, and seeing maybe the first real match or representation of that on such a massive stage is enough to sell the card. But taking that aside, if you look at the rest of this, is this good enough for WrestleMania? Is this something that is worth spending 2 nights on a weekend being glued to it? And is it going to resonate? Is it going to be something that we're talking about going forward? Or is it just one of those kind of WrestleManias out of obligation that you have to put on big matches because it's that time of year, but there's nothing really going on? Kind of what it felt like a couple weeks ago. We'll see what we get going forward. Michael thinks Braun versus Finn, Owens versus Orton, obviously, as some of the other things that are coming together. But yeah, there is a lot to be determined for sure. And that was Raw. Feels like we could talk about this stuff really quick when we're not talking about a historic heel turn, and it takes us exactly that amount of time before even talking about the first match on the show. Eddie wants to add Logan Paul and Punk to our WrestleMania hodgepodge. That was surprising, Austin. Even if they did things to telegraph it, Austin is saying that was really surprising result. Rhea taking a clean loss. Even if they did these things that would indicate that they may be going in that direction, it's like the Cena heel turn on a much lesser scale, but it's the same thing. You're not gonna believe it until you see it. Now I'm sure the out where the character can use is they were distracted, but that's not really an excuse. You're losing clean if you're looking off to the side. That's on you. It's not like Bianca was out there being extra trolly. So Fernando is not pleased with this direction, and I think his thought's valid here. Taking Rhea from Bianca from us is BS, especially when they were so close to it, right? Absolutely. And again, that is, I think, a better option than going with whatever they're doing with the multi-person matches here. Yeah, absolutely, Fernando. Like talked about the other night, the two women post horsewomen who have really emerged. Michael said Rhea is a Hillish character, but fans embrace her. But this recent character that she's been in this specific storyline with Io has been as almost, I would call it, like lame face. It's a face that has it's a face that the heel version would not be getting cheered. There's nothing cool about it in the way it's been presented recently. Could be the case. Austin said possibly too many cooks in the kitchen. So there's a lot of talent right now. And like we've seen this happen in AEW when they get completely overloaded with it. But just in general, when you have a lot of talent, it's hard to place everyone in the proper positions. There's gonna be stuff like Priest and Drew that just feels so second tier, even if the performers themselves are not second tier. I was thinking of a few things though, in regards to what happened over the weekend, the incident, big Cena heel turn. Sean was not a fan of that finish. What's up, Sean? I promise I'll get back to you on that DM. I have some technical issues that are kind of delaying what we're talking about there, but I'll get back to you for sure. Michael says hiring talent out of petty has consequences. Yeah, but it's so fun to do, right? When you get that checkbook. And Fernando calls Bash of the Beach 2.0. The incident, as I mentioned, and as we all go through ways of processing it. And I was trying to think of something. Because there was some discourse I was hearing of, I can even get people to hate Cena. And I think having sat on that for a couple of sleeps, I've thought about it more, and I really think that people who are saying that are underestimating the connection John Cena had with people other than the people that were booing him in arenas and those of us that were on wrestling podcasts talking about those who were booing him in arenas. There's a deep connection there. That's some real IP, to use it such a cold, calculated Hollywood way. People care about that character, and people are invested in him being a good guy to the extent that you can be invested in those kind of things in wrestling in 2025. But I was thinking, we all probably assume that this is a relatively short heel run. So what can he do to really make himself heal up, to make us boo him? And I was thinking of a few things. Some people John Cena can heal on, like realistically. Obviously, he's gonna face guys like Orton and Punk and all these other elements where he's gonna have a heel dynamic when he's always been the face. But what about some ones he can do on like a week to week basis? The obvious one that's been thrown out has been R-Truth. It's almost so obvious that I don't know if I want to see it. But that's what I'm talking about. Guys like that. You have Cena put R-Truth on a stretcher, and oh boy, you're going to get some heat. But even beyond that, think about someone that we saw tonight, someone like a Rey Mysterio. Now, John Cena's character has always been so damn patronizing of Rey Mysterio for years and years. It would be amazing for all that to finally come out of him. It was always around like Mysterio and Eddie that he kind of turned back in the day, going to that Survivor Series. So it would make sense for him to be back at the scene of the crime. And remember back in 2011 when Ray was the champ for like an hour and a half and he dropped it to Cena and Cena was acting like he was doing him the biggest favor of all time? I don't think Ray should forget that. So I'm going to say Ray is a pretty good one for him to heal on. Another person for him to heal on would be Big E. Now, he doesn't have a ton of personal history with Big E, but as the New Day have proved, if there's any way to really get some real heat, beat me to Big E. Insult the idea of the New Day. Discourage him. Tell him not to go on. Tell him to give up. Big E can be a bit of a proxy for some of these Make-A-Wish kids and that sort of element that they're going to bring into this as the evil anti-Cena. Another guy, a wild card, that won't necessarily get cheered, but an interesting interaction that I'm looking for him to have is with The Miz. Now, you might say Miz, obviously, R-Truth, Rey Mysterio, Big E, those are people John Cena can get heat with. He's going to get cheered if he goes opposite The Miz. But I need to see it. I need to see him go opposite The Miz because I think The Miz is the one guy that can be like the Bobby Heenan of this era. Remember, Bobby Heenan was vindicated after Bash at the Beach when Hogan went heel. The Miz had 2 WrestleMania cycles with Cena. Cena's driven him crazy. He's gotten engaged right in front of him, right in front of his wife. He's been telling you what a terrible person Cena is for all these years. The Miz was right. The Miz was right all along. So those are just some guys that are hanging around now that John Cena can heal on. He'll heal on kids. He'll heal on the crowd. He'll heal on marks for sure. Waiting for that one. Little Jimmy in the morgue. Jeez. Yeah, whose side is he on? Can you imagine if McAfee would have like blown it? Imagine if McAfee would have said, "Oh no, why is Cena out here, Cole? Is he gonna sell his soul?" Imagine if that would have gone down like that. LA Knight's a good one. I'm so sick of that carrying cross interrupting people gimmick. Can you just go somewhere with it? The devil on your shoulder. getting involved with poor Christian AJ. I'm just sick of that damn storyline or whatever that is. I'm sick of the interviews and the interrupting of people. Can I get my ads on Netflix at that point? Can they run the ads then during the interview, the interrupting interview? That's when I want my ads on Netflix strips. Joe Hendry. Great one. Yeah, I agree, Sean. I think he's annoying. Joe Hendry's a great one. They could do that in NXT. That's awesome if they were to do something like that. Zayn is interesting because that's of all that mix of top guys, it's one he has like the least amount of history with. Although you do have that night one when Zayn debuted on the main roster, so there is a little bit of that history right there. And right now, Zayn is the ultimate baby face of all baby faces. Nah, yeah, I'll keep my thoughts to myself. Good shot on that one. Here's something else I wanted to think about. Something else I wanted to throw into the ether. Had another idea. You know what, Michael? Another one I was kind of thinking of actually would be the Hardy Boys. Now that they might have a little bit of main roster run, that would be a bad if I'm thinking of these older teams too, or older performers for him to heal with. Jay and Cena would be great. I don't think we'd get there, Austin, just based on our timeline that we're working with. But definitely, I mean, it's funny because Cena Gunther's a match so many people have wanted, and it's the other side of that big WrestleMania match might be the huge match. As I mentioned, it's this thing that we're all trying to process the Cena heel turn, and it's bigger in some ways than the 96 Hogan heel turn because it's not just that Cena went heel, it's that Cena went heel like from a literal sense because that was such a big part of that character was not being healed, not just not being a bad guy, but not being a heel, despite the calls to turn him heel, despite the logic that it was seemed to have made for many, many years. They didn't do it. And when they did it very, very late. Very, very late in the process. So I thought of, you know what are some other things similar to this that WWE did give us, but they gave us like just a little late. Now there's only a few that I thought of, but I'm sure you guys have some other ones. So one of the first things I thought of that WWE gave us a little too late was a good RVD title run. Now some of the people involved in that are still involved in all of this today. RVD was like the hottest guy in the company a few times. Way back like 2001, No Mercy, when the invasion angle is running on fumes, suddenly RVD is the hottest guy in the company. Now, putting the title on him in 01 off of the failed Austin heel turn probably wouldn't have been the way to go, but it was pretty awesome. And then just a year later, he's one of the first main challengers for Triple H's awarded title, and he doesn't get the belt, and he goes down. Now, his title win was glorious. In fact, it was against John Cena. In fact, it was the first time you can argue Cena actually played a heel in a match. He wasn't really the heel in the lead up, but he played a heel in that match in the Hammerstein Ballroom. Now, as you guys are mentioning and killing everyone's buzz in the chat, RVD was his own downfall, but that was his downfall on winning the title. I still think we got to the title victory way, way too late. Something else we got a little too late was a Sting run. Period. Now, this isn't necessarily WWE's fault that Sting got out every bit of prime he had left in him, every bit of athletic ability, anything that people would have wanted to really use him for a sustained run, left that all in 2000s TNA. That's unfortunate. But when we got Sting, we got him really late. At least the run was so awesome that he lost to Triple H at WrestleMania, beat the Big Show on a Raw, and got retired for a short time in the middle of the ring by Seth Rollins, only to be in the Hall of Fame the very next year. That all really worked out. Really wish we would have had a Sting run earlier. That's some trolling, E, to say that he got the. I know. I'm not saying you're doing the trolling. The 49th best match of all time in the home of the San Francisco 49ers. Weird list. I was into the match that was happening. Then the cameos came out and they made no sense. Something else we got a little too late was a Booker T world title win. Could have really used that at WrestleMania 19. Really could have. Instead, we get it in 06 as they're giving up on the Rey Mysterio run because Chavo interferes and costs Rey the match. And King Booker gets the title. It didn't have to be at WrestleMania 19, but that would have been a good time. Or other times before that. Or when we're coming off the invasion, if he's ever taken, seriously as a character in any way, shape, or form. That would have been great to get a good Booker T run. And finally, something that we got way too late, and we're still suffering the consequences of, by the way, is a great Goldberg run. Oh no. Back in 04, we got Brock and Goldberg hugging and kissing each other for 20 minutes in the middle of the ring. And Austin watches chewing his tobacco. We got Goldberg putting on a gold dust wig. We got Goldberg getting embarrassed by The Rock in the promos. We got Triple H in bicycle shorts winning Elimination Chambers. We have triple threats with Kane and Triple H at Armageddon 1999. There was that. Somehow, for a 6-month period, 20 years later, we got a hell of a run out of Goldberg and Brock. And that's the most unfortunate late thing we ever got in WWE history, because that convinced the powers that be and Goldberg that he should have like 4 matches a year. And now the specter of a retirement match hangs over modern WWE. So I really wish we would have just had a good title run. Goldberg's embryonic kids could have seen him then, and we wouldn't be stuck with any of this. I don't want to see it, Austin. I don't want to see it. Unless it's against Dolph Ziggler. I take that back. I could watch Goldberg kill Dolph Ziggler. There's nothing on Dolph. He's good at being a Goldberg opponent. I could watch Goldberg and Dolph every day. They should just open Raw every week with Goldberg and Dolph. And then that's all you need. That's how you do Raw. Well, I've done the Raw post show for a little over an hour. That's a long time for me talking. I want to head on out a little bit, but get in your last couple of chats before we ride off into the sunset. Oh, WCW too lates and forgottens. There's a whole thing there with that, right? NXT predictions. I don't know. I don't know enough of the card. I'm gonna watch NXT tomorrow, and then yeah. It's the women's match, right? The Victoria and Julia. Is that it? That's sounding like a real great wrestling analyst right here. On that note, guys, it was a fun Raw. It was fun thinking about who Cena could be a heel against, and it was fun looking back on those late runs. I will talk to you guys next Monday.